Faith isn't fiction. Freedom isn't free. Getting too comfortable brought on this mess. This is Freedom Forever Forward. Let's get uncomfortable. I am sure, 200% sure, that you've noticed, as have I, a huge shift regarding our First Amendment freedom of speech rights. We're at the beginning of the 21st century. Actually, we're in the beginning of the second quarter of the 21st century, and we talk more than ever. We say less than ever, however. Everyone has a platform. Everyone has a voice. And yet, people are more afraid than ever to speak honestly, truthfully, openly. Why is that? I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you why. Because we've redefined the word tolerance. And not only have we redefined the word, we've misapplied its essence, the spirit of the word tolerance. When I was growing up, tolerance meant I disagree with what you're saying, but I respect your right to say it. Nowadays, it means I must agree with you or stay silent or be canceled or be censored. And brothers and sisters, fellow Americans, who are we kidding? Not ourselves, because that's not tolerance. That's pressure. That's acquiescence. That's surrender. And by the way, the pressure isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. It's the look you get in the classroom or the workplace, the sudden silence in a group of conversation, right? The hesitation before you hit post on social media. So you start asking yourself, is this worth it? Will this come back and bite me in the rear? Will I get labeled and branded as this or as that? And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to self-censor. And there's the danger. When truth becomes too risky to say, people stop saying it. When people stop saying what they believe, truth doesn't win. It disappears. Not because it's been disproven, but because it's been suppressed. Not because it's false or of less value, but because it's costly. Nowadays, there's some kind of price to pay or some consequence that follows for speaking truth. And when truth disappears from public conversations, other things take its place, like narratives, propaganda, popular trends, and for crying out loud, emotions. Whatever is loudest becomes the new truth. That doesn't lead to a healthy culture. It actually becomes a controlled one. Is that where we've gone? Allow me the audacity to quote the words of my master, Jesus the Christ. If you open up John chapter 8, verse 32, you'll remember he says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Did you notice something? He didn't say, "and the truth shall make you comfortable." He said, "free." The truth shall make you free. And freedom requires courage. So are we really becoming more tolerant or just more afraid? We're going to go to church for a little moment. Just bear with me. I am reminded of Paul's second epistle to Timothy. That would be 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And Paul teaches Timothy, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Let's break this scripture down. But first, a little context. Timothy was a young convert in the early Christian church, and his leadership skills and eager disposition to proclaim the gospel seem to have caught Paul's attention somehow. So despite his youth, right, despite his young age, some scholars say that he could have been between late teens, early 20s. So imagine that. Now, in this verse, Paul lets him know that God hasn't, that means has not, given us a spirit of fear. So it's only logical to ask who that spirit of fear comes from. I think you and I both know who it comes from, not God. So immediately Paul assures Timothy what it is that God has given us. The spirit of power, in other words, courage, assertiveness, boldness. The spirit of love, that's pretty self-explanatory. And the spirit of a sound mind. So a spirit of reason, logic, common sense, so lacking these days. Isn't that amazing? Okay, we're back from church. But this is why this brief church moment is so important to me. You may recall from my very first episode that I mentioned how scripture doesn't ignore all the different aspects of culture like politics and power, but it goes head on, right? Scriptures talk about the consequences that follow when truth is deemed as negotiable or trivial. Now, lately, society, and specifically in the United States of America, this society that is our reality today has allowed truth to become negotiable, optional, and far too often twisted, all in the name of tolerance. So, why are so many people staying quiet? This is what I've discovered. It comes down to three things: fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of consequences. And let's be honest, all three of those are very real. Those fears are the real deal. People lose career opportunities, they get labeled or even isolated. So silence and tolerance start to feel like the safer options. But silence and tolerance have a cost too. Because when good people stay silent, bad ideas go unchallenged. And boy, we've seen our share of those. Bad ideas, that is. We've also become a culture that prioritizes comfort over conviction. We don't want tension. We don't want conflict. We don't want to risk relationships. So we avoid hard conversations altogether. But avoiding truth doesn't preserve unity. It creates fragility. Because unity that can't handle disagreement isn't really unity. It's avoidance. So this is where I feel, honestly, where faith becomes critical. Because Christianity has never been about blending in. It's actually challenging. It challenges us to stand firm, even when it's uncomfortable. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If we continue down this path, we don't just lose honest conversation, we lose clarity. And when a society loses clarity, it becomes divided, confused, easily manipulated. Sound familiar? Because guess what? When truth is no longer clearly spoken, people don't know who or what to trust. So I'm going to ask you directly, point blank. When was the last time you held back what you believed because you were afraid of how people would react? Maybe you were afraid that you would offend someone. Not because you were wrong, but because it was easier to zip it up and stay quiet. We've all been there. I'm guilty of that myself. So the question is, what kind of culture are we creating if we keep choosing silence? Now, for the sake of clarity and honesty, Speaking truth does not mean being reckless. It doesn't mean being disrespectful. It doesn't mean shouting people down. Truth without love becomes harsh, but love without truth becomes meaningless and worthless. The goal is both clarity and compassion, conviction and humility. Because at the end of the day, brothers and sisters, fellow Americans, a society that values truth will always be stronger than one that avoids it. And a generation that has the courage to speak honestly will always be the generation that shapes the future. So instead of asking, is it safe to say what I believe? Or is it okay to speak truth? The real question is, what happens if no one does, including ourselves? Because truth doesn't disappear overnight. It fades when people are too afraid to speak it. That is my message for today. I'm your host, Brian Rios, and this is Freedom Forever Forward. Hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Till we meet again, be well and be blessed. Let's move faith, freedom, and this nation forward. Now, if this challenges you, share it. If it changed you, subscribe.